Hello there, my dear. I am so glad that you clicked on this video and you are opening yourself up to receive whatever message comes forth. As I often say on these videos, I don't prepare in advance. I open what I call the Akashic Records of the collective, the Truly Yours collective. And if you're here, that means you clicked it and it's for you. And remember, whatever comes forth, consider what resonates with you and then what doesn't, you can let it go. I always try to remind folks that sometimes on these greater channeling videos that the whole message may not be entirely for you. There will be a few details that speak directly to you. Maybe the greater message speaks to you. And so remember that. And that's why this is different than getting an individual reading where you might receive, like everything you receive is for you versus here, you clicked here and depending on where you're at, um, certain things may be actually true to you versus other messages might be for other people watching. Alrighty. So we're going to begin. I'm going to tune in and see what message is coming through. So they say the title of the message is To Be. They're showing me that a lot of us are spending our time like doing a lot of things, but we're not spending a lot of time being. And they're like, that's the message that they're going to hone in on and that you're going to hear over and over and over again in this video is what does it mean for you to be? And they're saying actually that this isn't just a question of like mindfulness and being versus doing, but it's also a question of like being as it's attached to certain identities. So they said like to be a mother, to be a working professional, to be a teacher, to be a guide, to be a child, to be a daughter or a son. And so they're asking us to like really get close to what are all the identities that we've decided to claim and to use. And we walk in every day as we interact with people. Like, what are they for you? And they're saying, like, are you satisfied with the way that you're showing up, the way that you're being as it relates to that role? And they're giving me this really squishy feeling in my heart because um they're like, yeah. They're inviting me to tell you about like my role as an aunt, right? It's a role I never saw, I never planned for. I never thought I would have because I'm like the oldest. But it's one of the most important roles like in my life. And I had never imagined or planned for it. And so they're saying, like, what is a role you didn't imagine or plan for, but is like actually really important to the core of who you are and what you want to do and how you want to walk in the world? Because they're saying there's like a role for some of you that you're not claiming. And they're saying there are three different types of people this relates to. There's some of you who are just not claiming your gifts and being creatives. Then there's a batch of you who are here to guide others and to be with others and bring them along, and you're in denial of how much knowledge and how much wisdom you have. And I said that's a pretty strong word, denial. They're like, that's just the truth. Like people sit and they walk in absolute blindness. They show me this image of someone walking and having like no clue. So like you're standing in front of a mirror and you're blind to the reflection back to you because you're not taking the time to take uh, a moment to notice what is it that you have to give in order to be a guide. And they're saying some of you have ventured into these roles unexpectedly. So they're showing me like all these roles like related to family mainly that you have walked into, that you have agreed to, that you had never imagined that you would or hadn't really planned for, hadn't really considered. And now you're sitting there and you're like, how am I gonna do this? Like, how do I show up? They're like, show me someone being like a step parent. They're saying like someone specifically being a stepmom. Um, and it's not to say they're not saying like they're saying it's very similar to my role in being an aunt. Like it's not something I said I didn't want. It was just something I had never seen coming. And now I'm like, oh, what does that mean for how I choose to live and what I choose to do and how I interact and how I choose to show up as an aunt? Um, and they're showing me also like that my role as an aunt also affects like my approach to business in a way that if I wasn't an aunt, like it would be totally different. And so yeah, they're showing me like, yeah, my role in business, like I'm like, I have a very committed vision to providing a great deal of my family, like the ability to have freedom to do what they want in relation to their creative gifts, and that my being an aunt and having my nieces like really centered, like it's really important to me, right? And they're reminding you that this role that you're in the context of family, and they're saying like some of you are wives, some of you are husbands, some of you are step parents, some of you are grandparents, that now you get to intentionally walk that path in a way, right? Like you clicked on the video and now they're asking you to be like, well, if you could be a little bit more aware of how you're being in the context of this relationship to someone, what is it that you want to pick up and what is it that you want to release? Because they're saying like you also don't have to do what everybody else says is required for that particular role. But now that you're aware of it, the reality is like, well, what do you want it to be? And what do you want it to encompass? And what is important to you as it relates to those groups of people, right? That you have that relationship to. And they're saying that this is not really about because they're saying there's a totally different message for people who need to release identities that no longer suit them. Um, mm, yeah, they're saying like there's something about that part of identity that they're not really speaking to right now. They're not really asking you to sit here and they're saying like blow up your life. They're like, no, that's not what this message is about. This message is about the role you had never anticipated receiving and how that now is sort of like rippling or reverberating throughout your life to give you a different sense and perception of the world around you. And that you get to choose what that looks like for that relationship, but also get to choose like what that means for the way that you live and what feels good to do and what doesn't feel right and true anymore. Right? Um, Let me see if they have anything else to share. Yeah, they show me this image. They're like, it sounds really simple to say like the message is to be. But then they show me this vision of someone like walking down the stairs and walking through a path. They're like, this path is non-linear and that it will require you to go, they're like, it's gonna require you to go to dark places and then come up and enjoy like the beauty of the world again. And they're telling you to be patient with yourself as you walk that path because if you didn't anticipate having that role, then the point is that you get to make, they're saying you get to make mistakes and you get to learn and determine what you value and how you want to show up because of the mistakes that you've made. Right? Because they're saying, like, yeah, there might be a particular conception of something. They're like, oh no, this is really important to me. So I am intending to show up in the relationship this way and give this right? And they're like, sometimes the way you had anticipated that thing going doesn't turn out that way. Like it doesn't. It just doesn't, right? I had to pause my channeling because my cat was asking for food. Um, even though she ate a few hours ago. Um, and of course they're sharing like this is also part of the message. I'm trying a new routine with her. Um, and they're saying like maybe sometimes being whoever you're meant to be is also adjusting to the being that you're in relationship to. So with her, I'm trying a new way of eating, and serving her food so that she stays full longer. And what that moment showed me is like, it doesn't matter. To her, the trigger of us going into the kitchen reveals to her that she is ready to eat, even though she is full because she just ate an amount of food that covers her for a significant period of time beyond just a few hours. And so they're just, I'm saying all these details to you because they're like, sometimes it's that simple. Like we imagine that our relationship to others and the role that we're exploring as new is like things that we want and things that are important to us that we want to be able to instill in someone else or to do something that is simpler and we think is easier for us. And they're like, yeah, but except did you take into account the person that you're in relationship with, the being that you're in relationship with? Are you meeting what they need as well as something within you? Because that's the point of being in a relationship with them, right? Um, so they're like, you can have all these ideas for these things that you think are going to be amazing for them, but have you like taken a moment to see if those things land well? And they're like, they know some of you are working in relation to um children, and so it's going to be kind of hard to like ask yes or no questions or assume that they're not just um saying yes for the sake of saying yes. They're like, then your job is to notice, like, what is their response to certain things that you do? Notice, they're saying like, notice their energy, notice their affect, and notice the way they speak, notice when they're doing that particular thing with you that you find and think is important. Because at some point, even they're like, even if you're, because they said there's like the three folks I mentioned before, like the person who is not claiming their title as a creative, there's the person who um is having difficulty claiming their title as a guide, and then there's the person who is in relationship with other people and has is trying to figure out their um how they're gonna walk in this uh in this title as it relates to children, family, etc., right? So they're saying all of them require you to pay attention to the people that you're going to support, right? At some point, it's not just about you, right? In regards to that particular title. Um, and they're saying like that hurts sometimes to have to like come back to center and what feels like to you accommodate someone else's need, but in actuality, that's just what it means to be in relationship with others and to take seriously the they they say title isn't the right and true word because they said like to be. So like whatever you're being at that moment, right? And they're also saying some of us need to not be what we are in relation to other people as well. Like sometimes we require some tending and some caring of ourselves before we can actually show up to be the person that we want to be in relationship to that individual. And that gets to be fair and true too. They're like, some of you want to be all these things, but you don't have the capacity. And they're saying sometimes you feel like you lose your patience, sometimes you feel like you're not as kind and as compassionate as you could be. And then the question is, what part of you have you not honored? They're saying like abandoned, compromised because you're not in the best space to be in relationship with that person. And they're saying it's not going to be perfect. You're going to try and work towards taking care of yourself so that you have the wherewithal to be in connection with these people or these beings. Um, and it's okay if it doesn't go well, if you do lose your patience, if things don't go as the way you had imagined, because that's the beauty of being in relationship with others, is you can show up, apologize, see what they're asking in reference to that apology, and then try again. Because they're saying like these beings are in your life for a period of time. And you get to keep showing up and trying. And remember what they said at the beginning. They're like, remember, you get to make mistakes. And they're saying, like, actually, they're showing me this beautiful vision. Like, they imagine they're like these two people in this vision. And these two people are close to each other. And in the middle is this like gnarly, beautiful ball of green energy. And they're saying, like, that's the mistake. That's the moment of conflict. Um, and what you'll notice is that they come together after. And that's what you allowing yourself to make mistakes is if you take accountability for what's unfolded and show up as a responsible person to that other being, then it actually allows you to build something really meaningful. And that's what they're saying is like, are you allowing yourself to be the best version of whatever you want to be, whether it's a guide, a mother, an aunt, an uncle. They're showing me a lot of like men, husbands, or like, are you showing up the way that you would like? And are you okay when you're not? And are you allowing yourself to be seen in that level of vulnerability when things don't go as they imagined? Because most of the time they're saying that's what's going to happen. And what you'll notice when you allow yourself to be vulnerable is how happy people are to hold you, and be with you as you move through the learning process. And they're saying it's a learning process. You don't get to consistently show up. They're saying, like, as a hot mess express and then apologize 500 times all the time. At some point, you have to agree to change something, right? So even when it comes to my cat, I get very upset, but I used to get upset a lot more often. Now I get upset a lot less often. Um, and they're saying like that's the adjustment of the relationship that you have with other beings. And they're reminding me to remind you, like, even with my nieces, like, there'll just be moments when I go visit, and it's just like, okay. And then, um, they're showing me in this moment, I apologized to one of them because I got really upset. And then that was it. And they still want to see me, and they still want to spend time with me, and they still, right, respect me. And that what they're having me try to communicate to you, even as my throat is sort of closing up, because it's hard to be vulnerable with people, and it's hard to take accountability for your actions and your behaviors. They're like, yeah, but people come to see you differently the moment you are able to do that. And they're saying, like, you're able to do that from a sovereign place, not from a place of, oh, woe is me. Oh, you need to excuse my behavior. Oh, this is what happened. It's like, yes, you can explain, but you also have to actually be remorseful, to actually understand the pain that was inflicted, and then come forward and be like, ooh, that's a tough part of me. I need to explore where that came from. I need to apologize for others for the way that that harmed them, but then I need to go do the work myself. That's what they're saying. Like, you need to do the work of apologizing. You need to do the work of doing the work on yourself as to like what unfolded, what happened, what contributed to it, so that then you can show up differently. Because otherwise, it's kind of pointless to spend your time um, being in relationship with people and hoping that people will just forgive you. Mm. Um, And one, you haven't really authentically taken a moment to apologize for what actually transpired, for the pain that you might have caused, the confusion that might have transpired, whatever unfolded. And given they're like, and given the other space, given the other person space to share with you what actually happened, right? Because people are like quick to apologize. But sometimes they don't even know what they're apologizing for. They're just like, I did something bad because the other person responded poorly. And they're like, how about you become a little bit more like conscious? Like consider like what is it you're apologizing for? Is it just to make things like fine again? Because they're like, the reality is it's not going to make things fine again. It's just not. You apologizing is like a band-aid on something that requires stitches, that requires healing, because it's going to require some time, right? Band-aids don't work for things like that, right? Um, and so they're showing me it's like a three-step process. You have to be willing to see like what is it that transpired? How did you harm that person? Was that integrity to the way? And it could be person or being. Because they're saying like a few of you have animals, a few of you have like spiritual guides that you work with, right? How do you show up in integrity to you to apologize for something that wasn't in integrity? Give the person space to share what unfolded, see what was actually happening and contributed to it. And then both of you decide how do you move forward, right? And they're like, some of you have to do all this work before you give that person that apology, right? Like some of you have to go and figure out what unfolded, talk to a few people, and then move forward and have that conversation with that person. Some of you have been doing this for a while and have a really strong sense of who you are and have a good sense of the person that you're in relationship with as it relates to this particular role in your life. Um, and so you don't necessarily need to do all that. But either way, that has to be unfolded so that then you could figure out how do I want to show up, right? Because they're saying like the conflict creates the path for you to figure out how you may want to show up in integrity to you for the remainder of the time that you hold that role. They're saying like role, title, identity. So yeah, let me see if they have anything else. Yeah, they said they want to reiterate the idea that conflict creates, um, they're saying like, let me get this clear. They're saying like conflict is a path to meaningful relationships so that you can then walk and be in that role and that identity the way that you desire to be. And they're saying some of you have different levels of conflict. Some of you have like really deep, deep, deep conflict that spans years. And if that's you, they're like, take your time. It's okay for it to take your time. This isn't like gonna unfold in one span or one conversation with someone, right? And some of you, the conflict is different. They're saying like there's a range of you, like the conflict is like a one-time thing or that kind of repeats, and then you love this person, you got this conversation with. Some of you is like a little bit deeper. It's been a few years, the resentment is building. And then some of you, like, they're like showing me my relationship with some of my family members, right? Like some of it goes deep, it goes decades in, and you need to give yourself the time to I call it excavation. They call it like healing of something within you before you show up to be in relationship with that individual or those beings again. And they're like, that is to be okay too. That like if you're in conflict with a certain role in your life, they're like, if you're in conflict with the role of being a daughter or being a guide, then you have to allow yourself to do the work inside to see what's actually unfolding there, so that you can then figure out what is the conversation to be had with someone or if there isn't one at all. Because they're saying like conflict creates the path to more meaningful relationship. But sometimes the conflict doesn't get resolved with the person. They're like, some of us want to believe what's in the movies. And they're like, oh, we have this conversation with this person. Everything sounds amazing. We like whatever. And they're like, the truth is, sometimes the conflict is there for us to resolve something within ourselves so we can be in better relationship with that being, so that we can hold ourselves to the role that we've desired to have in this lifetime, right? They're like, so if you're a mother or if you're a daughter, they're saying like if you're an aunt, right? Like sometimes things are unfolding to help you sort of they're like showing me this vision of someone reaching within themselves for the light. Right? So like sometimes your light is being dimmed because you haven't resolved a conflict that you're in active engagement with, as it relates to someone, and you know that person is not far along enough in their healing path. That person is not ready for all that. And so the question is, are you gonna wait for that person or are you just gonna do the work, you know? Like there's like, are you gonna, you know? And they're saying and they're showing like this beautiful vision of somebody walking in the desert. And they're like, that work may take a little while. For those of you who have like decades and years and years and years, we want to imagine and we want to believe like healing happens, you cross it off, you move on. You've done it, you know? And they're like, but if it's something that long and that deep, then it's okay. They're saying it's okay for you to walk in the desert for a while and do the work and nourish yourself and show up as best you can, because those moments are also the ones in which you're made anew, right? Like we assume because we're in a fast-paced world, they're like we think it's a snap, like we think it just happens and it's fast and it's like it takes a little while of showing up differently in the world for people to see you that way, for you to be that way, right? And they're saying that gets to be okay too. And you get to make mistakes even as you're trying to figure out how to heal. And they're saying the reason the path is long, and they're saying you don't need, they're not saying that like just because you have a couple decades, it's going to take you another couple decades to get over it. No, they're just saying it's not going to happen overnight. They're saying like give yourself a few years, give yourself some time, some space, because that gets to be here too. And you get to have that as well. And they're like, your heart is squishy, right? It's really, really squishy, right? Because I have quite a difficult tenuous relationship with my mother. It's actually quite hard to channel it, but the way I have always seen it is, and I still feel it. And they're like, they're saying, they're also telling me this is one of my tenets because it feels like a very spiritual tenet to who I am and how I'm built. It's like, you don't get better being alone. you get better being in relationship with people. They're saying there are gonna be moments, right, where you decide to say, no, I can't do this anymore. I need some time. I need to not attend this. I need to not do this. I need to not talk to you. And then you have to decide, like, are you are you going to choose to grow now? Because that's how we grow is in relationship with other people. We don't, they're saying like growth doesn't come as you walk your path by yourself. Yes, they're like for some spiritual, um, they're saying like for those who are monks and those who are right, like they get to go sit and they get to have this journey and connection with the divine. But the great majority of us like have to sit and maneuver connections, relationships, and our connection to these roles and these titles and these identities as we move through them, as it happens in the moment. And that's the beauty of being human. You get figured out as you're in connection with these people. And so they're saying people very quick to remove people from their life. And the question is, if they're causing you harm, then of course that's important, right? But if it just makes you uncomfortable because you're unwilling to figure out how to heal this part of your connection to them or this role and identity that you hold, then like that's on you. Like you need to sit and do the work and then see what comes up after it. But we can't sit here. They're saying like you can't sit here and create boundaries and create ways of being. Um, and they're saying like throw away all the roles that you have been given in this lifetime because that's just not how it works. They're saying you get to define what those are. You get to define whether or not society's notions and your culture's notions, and they're saying society, culture, family's notions of these titles are the ones that you want to stick with, right? Because they're saying like some of them are antiquated and you ain't got to keep with that. And so they're reminding you you're a creative being. You get to reimagine. What does it mean to be? They're saying like a cat mom. What does it mean to be, right? Like for you, based on the healing that you've done and the work that you are doing and the things that are coming up in relationship to the beings that are related to that title. And they're saying like this is freaking hard work. Like super hard work. And they're saying that's why a lot of people don't do it. And they're saying, but if you're here, you signed up to do it. So questions, are you going to do it? Are you going to live in resistance to it? And they're saying like the other opposite part is like when you live in resistance to it, that means you're not in connection. That means you walk alone a lot. And they're saying, but you weren't meant to, so you don't have to. Um, yeah, and they're saying like be kind to yourself as you walk this path. You get to see how long it takes you to move through stuff. You get to decide what your healing process looks like, right? They're saying while also acknowledging that certain things in life will have you do more deeper healing. So they're showing me an example of like grief and death, right? Like people are like they move through that, right? And then things happen in life that ask you to grieve again the loss of this person, right? Um, so they're like showing me these big events, just like they're like you get married, the person you love can't be there. There's a level of grief to that, right? And that gets to be grieved and you get to feel that, and you get to release it and move on, but don't move on thinking you'll never, ever, ever grieve again, right? And they're saying the same happens whether it's in grief um, for someone's loss, like physical loss from this world, or it's just a strained relationship with a parent. They're saying you will do a certain level of healing, and then you'll be invited into something deeper when you reach, they're saying like, they're saying say the word milestone, but it doesn't even have to be a milestone. It could just be a particular event. They're like, you could be at somebody's event and you could see somebody's relationship with their parent and be like, oof, it hits you that that's not something present in your life, right? That doesn't make you someone who's not healed. It's someone that makes you open to the process of healing. And the question of like, what's the deeper healing that's being asked of you right now, right? And they're saying that's why they want you to be kind to yourself, allow yourself to make mistakes. And they're like, keep showing up. They're like, show up, show up, show up. Keep showing up for it in whatever way you can. And they're saying, like, you don't have to show up 500% all the time. It could just be like you showed up to show up. And there'll be other times you'll show up differently. Sorry, I just heard a bird outside. It's quite an interesting bird call. Oh, all right. We are complete, they say. I hope this message gave you something to consider, to mull on. You're welcome in the comments to share what came up for you. Let me know what role or identity or title came up for you as I was channeling that you feel like you're being asked to consider to be with a little differently than you imagine. Um, and if it feels like a reading would be supportive for you, and some support to consider like what that would be for you. Like what is the title asking of you? What's the role asking of you? What's the way you want to reimagine it? And you want to do that work one-on-one? Like I'd be more than happy to support you because that's the work that takes a little bit of time, but it also just takes a bit of imagination and faith to be like, oh, right? Because we all imagine like certain roles are like a lot. And they're like, but maybe it doesn't have to be that maybe if you allow yourself to receive direct guidance from the divine, your specific spiritual guides, like the path to healing could be a little easier than you think it is, than you've made it out to be. Um, and they're saying that that work can only be done if you work with someone one-on-one, whether that's me, a therapist, another practitioner. Like they're just inviting you to do it. I invite you to do it with me because you decided to watch this video. So maybe it resonates with you. Maybe you would like that kind of energetic and spiritual support from the Akashic Records. And so I am here. But either way, I wish you all the best as you walk this tricky, tricky path. And they're like having my heart all tense up and tight. And they're like, yeah, because this is like the squishy, tough stuff of living. They're saying like that's also like what makes living as a human so wonderful. And so I will see you in the next video.